Oh, that song never ceases to fire me up.
It doesn't. Hope it fires you up well because you need a
we
topic
needed
for
it.
today. You need it.
We're just sitting around.
I know, sitting around for 10 minutes. Hey, what do you want to talk
Jam
about?
out to our
I don't
theme
know. What do you
song.
want to talk about? I don't know. What are you going to talk about? It's like trying to figure out a place to eat. What do you want to eat? I don't know. I don't care. How about Chili's? No, I'm not going to Chili's. How about Firebirds? I'm not going to Firebirds. Speaking of,
my only topic got shot down.
yeah, your job that you get shot down. But what didn't get shot down is today's podcast. We're still here for you. Today's February 1st, 2021. Welcome aboard. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 448.
We think.
Which is about all that I do know today. It is a. I know we said it was cold last week, but it's for real cold today.
People don't like hearing that.
I know. It's like they're like, oh, there's those pansies. It's like it's windy. The wind chill's got to be in at least 3 or 4 degrees right now.
You think it's that cold?
No. I was just trying to make myself feel better for being such a pansy.
3 to 4. It's probably
No,
38.
I got up this morning and ran. It was spitting snow. It was dark. It's cold. It's just the wind that gets you. It is windy and nasty. I was getting some stuff out of our storage unit to get ready and packing for run camp, which we have this week. Well, about 23 of us will gather in the.
Did you lock that closet, by the way?
Yeah, I got it locked.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
It's like
there's nothing in there to steal. We'll gather in the metropolis of Nunley, Tennessee, which is about an hour outside of Nashville, and we will run as much as we can from basically Wednesday night through Sunday morning. Be set up in the lodge, but looking forward to that. But yeah, it's cold here today, but that's fine. Apparently, as I've read in Training Peaks this morning and on the news, I guess a lot of people are getting snow, so congratulations. We live in Chattanooga where it could snow basically everywhere else in the country. We will not get any. That's kind of how it's been the entire year.
So come visit.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think Nashville's gotten snow like 3 times in the last month, and we've gotten absolutely nothing, which I'm kind of bummed out. I mean, I like a little bit of snow. I just don't. If it's going to be cold and rainy, just give me some snow.
I agree with that.
Yeah, you're a Wisconsin guy. You know all about snow.
It all serves its purpose. Running in cold rain is really good for you.
Did you run in the cold this week?
I didn't. But I'm not.
I was going to say, like, did you get out and get out on the road this week?
No, I'm not mentally there. That's what I'm saying. Is like I think it needs to. You need to cross that bridge sort of like once in a while, and I'm kind of ashamed of myself. I feel a little wimpy. I've got runner's shoulder and
Stop it with the runner's
come
shoulder.
on, man. I was so excited when you told me that this morning. I'm like, man, my shoulder. I think it's my running.
Listen,
That's a real thing.
sometimes you say things to people because you want to make them feel better.
Oh,
and that was one of those moments. I was like,
come on, man.
I was
I'm gonna
like,
Google that. Right
I was like, I think you have
DuckDuckGo it.
while you're Googling that. First off, welcome aboard. We appreciate you tuning in. If it's your first time listening, hang around, stick with us. We'll get into our groove here in about 3 or 4 minutes, or hopefully in about 35 when Mike gets done with his shoulder runner's shoulder thing. But yeah, welcome aboard. We cover all things triathlon and all things life. We sometimes will go into in depth some bike and run philosophy and training outlines, and I can already see you shaking your head. You're like, "Yep, you're wrong."
I'm holding too much tension.
You're holding too much tension.
Body. I believe that.
All right, listen, when we've had a lot of people come into our hub. We have a training facility here in Chattanooga that our athletes come to. We've had a lot of people come in here the last month, and that has been one of the main things I've actually seen with athletes on the curved treadmill is that they are holding so much tension, and you can see it from behind. Like they'll have one of their shoulders cocked like way up high, closer, and the other one like relaxed below. And I guess you don't know that you're doing it, obviously, but I think we forget that like everything that we do is connected. So if your right side is all the way up towards your ear, then your hips coming up with it, and your hips coming with it, your legs coming up with it, and therefore when your strides are going to be shorter and longer than the other. So it could be affecting a lot of things. We'll get to your runner's shoulder in a minute. Let me finish my intro. I'm glad that my Wikipedia Holiday Inn Express diagnosis was on point. You now have runner's shoulder. Get over it.
I had it before I started running.
So you had life shoulder.
I had life shoulder. Now it's just irritated by runner's shoulder.
Tense. But yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. Sometimes we do on-air diagnosis for athletes as well.
It just occurred to me how this happened. Probably I had plantar fasciitis in my left heel.
See, it's
and
always
I was trying to
opposite.
balance it out. And
always goes opposite.
Like we'll take that pain up here, young man, in your shoulder.
Young man, you're being generous. But no, we appreciate you doing it. We have 447 other podcasts you can dig back through. Mike does an outstanding job of outlining those. and going through, and you can pick and choose, you can listen in order, but we'll always give you some dose of hopefully good medicine to keep you happy and healthy. We have no sponsors. I'm not going with the dad jokes today, I promise. No sponsors, no ads, just one agenda. That's to have an open, honest discussion. Mike and I, as both coaches and athletes for the last 10 or 15 years, just try to do our best to see what we're going through, what our athletes are going through. Sometimes we'll hop in our Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group. If you want to search that, answer one simple question, we will let you in. That's it. Open, honest discussion, laid back style, laid back format, I guess. And hopefully you can take something from it and apply it to your daily life and enjoy yourself.
I'm trying.
So tell me about this runner shoulder. How did it really happen, do you feel?
I think I was...
And then we're going to move on so people don't drop us.
Yeah. I think it was when I fell on the trail. I think I irritated it or something. And then I used to do a lot of push-ups, and I think I inflamed it. And then I started running a lot of the treadmill run thing. I don't think that really is where it came from. I just think that every time I run, it just kind of inflames it a little bit, you know. So who knows, man? But like, all I got to say is that it just irritates the shit out of me. And I think a lot of us deal with like chronic things like that. So my gut is just telling me to be like, I don't think anything's like, you know, majorly wrong or anything like that. But so my gut is like, okay, dude, you got to get your head straight and you got to plow through this thing, just like you did the plantar fasciitis. I don't want to baby it. I want to treat it right, but I don't want to baby it. I think it's got something to do with my overall just balance of muscular structure and things like that.
I think, listen, and I'm 40 now, so I can say this, but as we get older, I'm pretty sure that we all have something. I mean,
it's just weird.
This is like, I think one of the attributes that a lot of athletes either have, going one way or the other, but you have a lot of people who just have some kind of constant something, right? They have some kind of, it's not, and I wouldn't, like, there's a huge difference. That was like one of the, this is like, I think, an old school thing to say, but my football coach in high school, he would say, there's a big difference in being hurt or being injured. And that was obviously like, you know, if you were injured, you can't play. If you're hurting, you're probably going to play. I wouldn't say that's the greatest advice ever, but I think generally speaking, like when you are doing so many things and you have life and you have all these other things that you're doing and stress is high and the things that you're doing can kind of be all over the place. You've got things that are different movements outside of just regular swim, bike, and run. I think one of the things that you forget in a swim, bike, run like training, you know, style is that like everything we do is basically north and south. We don't do a lot of east and west stuff. So as you get older, you know, you kind of lose the east-west nature of like what you do. So I think you're always going to I don't want to say always because you should feel generally healthy, but I think a lot of times we all kind of go through nagging. I don't want to say nagging injuries because you should feel, you know, for the most part healthy. But I think we all kind of deal with those. And I think in my experience, a lot of people deal with those in this time of year. I think it's just because it's cold, to be honest with you. But
I do. You're nagging irritations, you know. It's not injuries, I guess, per se. But, yeah, it just bugs the crap out of you. That north, south, east, west thing is a big deal. I think and here's the thing is like, boy, did I take my shoulder for granted for 50-some years? You know, it's like when you reach out to, you know, hand your dog a treat and it sort of like pains you or whatever, throw you in a weird way or whatever. And, yeah, I totally think that that can happen in triathlon training. You know, you're just running straight, and you don't, like, do any side motions and things of that nature.
But I've got to say, though, and having known you for 8 years, you have been about as solid in terms of not getting injured as really anybody I've known and worked with. You know, I've got plenty of athletes that have worked for years and years and years and basically like never get hurt. I think some people are built that way. I think that's just like how they work. I also think the people that tend to not get injured or have like, you know, niggles or these aches and pains or stuff, you know, like I think some of it is just kind of the way you're built. I think some people are just built a little bit differently than others, and some people are more susceptible to getting injured more often.
I'm built. You're saying I'm built like a tank,
and you're like a tank. And also some people are obviously just kind of clumsy, and those kind of things happen. But especially like as you participate in the sport for a long period of time, and especially for a guy who's done and been training for an Ironman every single year since you got into the sport, you have held up really, really well in terms of like you haven't had these stress fractures or you've had to have surgeries or haven't had like these long layoffs. I mean, I know this last year you had some issues with plantar fasciitis for a while, but I think in my opinion, obviously, I'm going to go back to like put my diagnosis hat on my PhD.
I like that guy.
Yeah, I bet you do. There is, and this is just for the most part, this is my experience as a coach and looking through athletes like Training Peaks and when they tend to have what I would consider, aches and pains or strains, is it almost always coincides with giant or increased life stress, lack of sleep, high stress at work, high stress at home, changes in their environment. It almost always comes in that. And I have to believe that knowing basically all about your life for the last 8 years, you basically have really honestly had little to, if any, ever time off for any kind of injury at all. No nagging, nothing, no plantar fasciitis, no problems with your shoulders, no issues with really anything. You've never been sidelined, period, for 7 years straight. Training, I don't want to say year round, but obviously training for long distance triathlon, getting into your, mid to upper 50s with no breaks, nothing at all. And then last year, obviously, you had just about as much stress and upheaval and changes as anybody. I know you lost your father, you ended up moving, what ended up being moving 4 times, basically in a span of 4 months to a brand new city. And then right when you move to this brand new city, hey, you can't meet anybody because we're all going to be locked down for a few months. And so open up the hub and that stress and trying to figure out things. So you had all the stress, and to me, it coincided with this plantar fasciitis issue. And I think obviously I think a lot of times we tend to not look. And I think this goes back to the conversation I was trying to have, last week, talking about the really, really crappy run that I had on Tuesday. Was sometimes we can look at a run or look at a ride or look at how our training's going, look at an injury and think, okay, well, it happened just because of this one thing. Yeah. Right. And I don't necessarily think all the answers are that simple, but in terms of you, I think if you look at all the things, whether it was diet, whether it was, your day-to-day, nutrition or sleep pattern or moving, or it's okay, that all kind of makes sense. If you look back and kind of triage why you have, or what the why and how you got here, whether it's you have a real injury, a real bad injury, or I know for me specifically, the first thing, I said to you when you were struggling with your plantar fasciitis was what? What? You remember what I said to you?
My weight.
Yes, I said it was more than likely was your weight, because I know that was for me when I was trail running a lot early part of last year, getting up to long runs. I started to have I never missed a run, but my plantar fasciitis was so bad when I would get done with the run, I wasn't hobbling, but I had to hold on to the rails going downstairs every morning because my heel was always worse in the morning, but my heel was so tender that it was just painful. Yeah. And then I ended up dropping, I think 10 pounds. I started to really focus on my nutrition. I didn't stop running because it didn't hurt while I ran, but it just was so excruciating afterwards. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna keep on going. I ended up losing weight and it just kind of took care of itself. But to me, it was oh, I'm not hurt. My running stride doesn't need to change. I just maybe need to look at the simplest answer. And sometimes I think that's something we don't do, is look at, okay, let's knock out these simple things that really make the most sense before we dive into this, super needling cryotherapy that's definitely going to work for me because the problem is my run form on my stride or my offset this. And a lot of times it's just oh, maybe I should just sleep and eat better for a few weeks and kind of see if that makes things, feel a bit better.
I'm 100% behind that.
When you're saying $35 copay, thank you.
You got it. It's no, when you're saying that my weight, but that makes sense that for me, I just thought that's also my mental weight, the weight that I'm carrying in my brain. And that's why I think I'm so kind of headstrong on this idea. I know I'm hurt right now, and I know I had that plantar fasciitis, all that stuff, but I was I know that something is it's not anything to do with anything because physical, really, even though I say I fell or whatever, I think that might have been it, but I don't know if that was it necessarily. I just think that for some reason, sort of this
could have been the tipping point. You could have taken yourself to the ledge, and the fall is what put you over.
Irritated it enough, but I have this sort of theory. Sometimes, if during the day I feel amazing, I know that my body is still in decent shape. And some days, I mean, just generally, if you feel light and clear, and you're, and then maybe that night later you're not feeling that way. It's not anything it gives me optimism in the sense during the day, my shoulder doesn't necessarily bother me. So I'm okay, well, I'm okay. I'm not going to overstress about. I'm trying not to overstress about stuff like that. But I feel like you just, like you're saying, you have to find that simple solution maybe, and it is sleeping, like, or eating better or whatever. And like I started like doing a little power juicing last night, just to see if I could alkaline myself a little bit better, because I think those are. I think those thoughts, those negative thoughts, and anxieties, and the things like that, they jack, what is it, cortisol?
Cortisol level?
Yeah, and the stress levels and things like that. I think those things have a tendency to, congregate sometimes, and that's how they express themselves. And so I think it is just, I do really believe it's a general overall body-mind balance thing in some regard.
Oh, I mean, yes.
Sounding all new agey and shit.
No. Listen to you. I was like, who are you right now? I think it's one of those things that is vastly underrated and probably, I'm sure it's talked about a lot, but, and the answer is almost always like the most simplest, like out in the open, obvious thing if we like really sit back and like think about it, and I think that's one of the things that triathletes are famous for, is doing our very, very best to overanalyze and overcomplicate every single thing that we do. Every single ride, every single interval, every single run route, every single swim pace, every single thing that we do, we overanalyze. We rarely ever look at like the sky, the view from the sky. We look at everything from a magnifying glass without really kind of taking inventory on like what's really going on with our life. And I think that's one of the most important things an athlete can do, is just kind of do that. I did that like almost my entire run this morning, because, I went through this, just going back to like how you feel and if you're stressed and how your body's reacting, what's going on in your life. And I was thinking about last weekend, I kind of mentioned this in my weekly email to the team this morning. It was like Tuesday, I had literally like what I felt like was the worst run in like the last year, followed by like 2 or 3 days of kind of meh, kind of runs that were just kind of, they weren't great, they weren't bad, they were just kind of happy mediums, which is pretty much, a lot of running. Saturday, I felt about as strong as I have felt on a trail run in about a year. And then Sunday, I hopped out for just like a quick 20-minute and thought like, how you have those days where you check your bike tire to make sure it's pumped up, or your brakes aren't rubbing because you're like, my legs are toast. Yeah. It was the opposite. I stopped after like 10 minutes because I looked at my heart rate and I was like, this feels really, really good. And I was like, this can't be right. Like on the other end,
really?
Like I feel really, really good. Well, just because I was going back a few days thinking, this can't be right. I actually stopped and I made sure that I turned off made sure the optical sensor on my Garmin was off, because I don't trust those very well. And it was already off. And I was like, all right, maybe I do just kind of feel this good. It was later on in the day. I hadn't had coffee in a while. I was like, maybe this is like, where I naturally kind of sit at because me, I never really do like work out or run at like, the middle of the day, like 11 or 12. It's always like early in the morning or maybe late afternoon. And I was like, I feel great. So I got up this morning thinking, all right, you came just off the heels of like a really, really awesome run. Today, you're probably going to feel terrible. Went out and ran this morning and kind of checked, and I was like, you still feel really good. So let's triage back. Let's go back. So I literally thought the entire run, I was like, let's go back and think why last week could have been like last week. And and I think that's one of the hardest things for athletes to kind of comprehend. And this is, I think, one of the harder things for a coach to even maybe bring up or discuss is, last week was probably not you getting slower, and this week might not be you getting that much faster. It might just be you getting back to baseline, right? Back to baseline. Like last week, I wouldn't say I was incredibly stressed, but we have run camp this week, so I'll be pretty much out of the office from Wednesday to Sunday. We had 4 athletes coming in town on Friday. There's like a lot of stuff to do, and I just felt not stressed, but I just feel like I had a lot of stuff to do. I didn't sleep very well last week. On a couple of nights, I was probably having too much coffee. And I was like, yeah, all right. Like, that's probably the reason why. Like, I just felt heavy. And I worked all weekend last weekend. I worked every single day. And then this weekend, I didn't work at all Saturday. I didn't work very much at all Sunday. I chose to watch a little bit of Netflix instead of work, which has not been the usual as of late. I worked a little bit last night. But I felt overall just kind of at ease, like just relaxed.
Yeah.
And so I was on my run this morning. I was like, and my first thought this morning was, I'm back. Like my fitness is back, baby. Like here I come, where I was like, in November. But then I thought to myself, you're not really back. You're just kind of back to like the normal version of like where you are really with your fitness. Last week was an anomaly in that you just had not a bad week, but your fitness was was mirroring your life, right? It was like you weren't getting good sleep, check. You know, you were kind of stressed, check. Like you were mentally kind of exhausted, check. You know, you go, and was my diet great? Probably not, you know, check. So you go through this checklist, right? So was it my fitness that lagged or got worse? No. It was just my life choices, or basically how life was, that expressed it. And as the week got on, and I became more aware of those, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think we do this a lot. Like I had a whole lot of crappy runs. So you kind of think, all right, I need to dial things back. I need to refocus and make sure that I'm good to go. You do that, and then you have a great run period. You're like, I'm back. And you're like, wait a minute. I'm just kind of like back where I should have been before I decided to make, you know, a really stupid decision, or just overall life stress. Like it doesn't have to be about decisions. It can be just about, you know, the cards that life deals you. And then that's what this morning was. I got up really early because I had to run before the day got going. And I was like, I just need to get out early. And it was windy. And I was like, I just feel better. This is the result you get, Robbie, for just taking better damn care of yourself, right? And taking time and relaxing. And that was like a thing that's something that I have a hard time doing. You were talking about, you know, mentally, like you hold a lot of things in mentally, and that could be the issue with some of your tension in your shoulders, is that, you know, sometimes I have a very hard time like relaxing my brain. Like I just like to think. I like to think a lot, like the problem solve, like a troubleshoot. Sometimes I'll just make shit up to like work my way through, because my mind has stayed busy. And this weekend I tried to do a really good job of just kind of like zoning out, and just, because I think there is, like, I'm not a huge fan of watching mindless TV all the time, but I think there is, to an extent, sometimes it is okay to give your mind a break by maybe doing something mindless, right? Sure. Or watching something mindless. And I thought that helped me feel more energized, and I felt like that was and my runs were directly reflected by how I was, like, just felt more mentally and emotionally, and how my life was going. And I think that happens a lot of times with athletes, and like we have these things that come up in life, whether it's you're taking new medication, or, you know, this is something I bring up sometimes. And again, like it's a really, I think, a sensitive subject to people, but, you know, especially with the last year and how people have been, you know, stuck inside, or higher stress levels, and their eating habits haven't been great, sleeping habits haven't been great. And I'm not a coach that ever talks about weight with athletes. I think it's, you know, for most people, it's very just irrelevant. I mean, it did with you, but, you know, I love you. Like, you know, I could say it to your face. That's what we do. But I might say, like, you know, how is body composition? Are you feeling better? How are you fueling? And like, yeah, if you can run every single day of the week, and you can run 6-7 days, you can put in 15 hours of training. But if you're gaining weight and you gain 20 pounds versus where you were 6 months ago, then the fitness isn't necessarily going to correlate to what you really, really want to see. Like that's not, like, I don't think it's harsh. It's just a hard truth. And a lot of times it also goes with medication. Like if people hop on medication, that makes them retain weight, or makes them more hungry. Or on the flip side, you have athletes that see fitness diminish because they're taking medications that suppresses their appetite, and they just don't eat hardly ever, because they have to like remind themselves, like, well, yeah, your run felt like crap. What have you eaten the last 2 days? Well, you know, really not that much. Okay, let's try and do that. But as triathletes and as type A athletes and people, a lot of times, we like to look at the immediate thing that we just did as the answer, either good or bad, and we have to solve that. And it's rarely, if ever, we need to fix your run, and it's your run pace, your fitness, or we need to fix your bike ride or your power. It's usually all the things in your life that led to that result. Just like we use the analogy of your run. The run always gets blamed, right, for triathletes, because it's the very last thing you do. Yep. And you get out and you think, I got to get my run better. I got my feeling better. And you look back at the rest of your race and you think, how much did you swim? Not that much. Did you overswim? Probably. Did you, too much exertion? Definitely. How was your bike? Did you overshoot your power? Did you really go out of your zones? Oh, for sure. I really crushed it though. And then did you take in enough fuel? Probably not. But it's definitely my run. I'm telling you, I got to do more bricks. I got to run like 20 miles off the bike. No, it's the troubleshoot all the way back and look at everything that led up to that point. But again, and I'm going to shut up, our workouts are usually what highlight the impact that life is having on us at that moment. And we never like to kind of go in reverse and think about how can we really work through life. It's always like, it's got to be my run. My run's terrible. I'm fading. I'm not getting faster. Or it could just be we talk about accumulated fatigue. It just can be an accumulated life, in what we're going through. And I'm done. For telling you 45 minutes ago, I didn't have a lot to say today. I seem to have a lot to say today.
That's with no coffee?
I mean, I nobody said that. Nobody said that.
Okay.
I said
Yeah.
less coffee.
So like sometimes I think that when we do podcasts, it's sort of wander into this territory that, people are probably like, oh, come on, man, just give me some bike tips and run tips and all these kinds of things. But I think honestly, these are the most important things about triathlon and training and coupling that with life and just feeling good and stuff like that. I mean, there's so many little nuanced parts of this experience that we have to really think about. It's sort of like when honestly, when I go into Training Peaks now and I'm working with athletes and they said, this felt easier, this felt great. And I'm like, perfect, because it's one of those things where that just like you're saying, it sort of signals that things are going well in their life and they're approaching things right and whatever. And I love the talk about how people want to blame their run. And really there's just like that cascading issues that go way, way back or whatever to the beginning of the race or even before the race or whatever it is that can't, your body just can't hold on. We're looking at going to run camp this weekend, and I was just thinking about like that mental weight that I like to carry. It's not lost on me that I pretty much live a solo isolated lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like we work together and we hang out a lot, and that's good energy and stuff like that. But I did move into basically an industrial zone as the first tenant, and everywhere I look, there's just construction, equipment and people digging around and like new people every day building stuff. And I'm like, hey, how are you? And I mean, that's the extent of my social life to some degree. And then you go out and everybody's wearing like 3 masks and I can't, maybe I'll cut that. No, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just feels like that, so I'm going into run camp and I fully on some level, because the weird part is like when we had trail camp is when I made my discovery about plantar fasciitis, or I got my breakthrough, I should say. I was just kind of hanging out. I couldn't run. I wasn't running. And then all of a sudden one day I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to jog a little bit. And it felt pretty good. And then next thing you know, it was sort of gone. And I'm fully expecting on some level this to be a socialized connection event to the point where maybe I start letting go of the tension that I'm holding in my shoulder, for example. And I see how that can happen. I think that's the part about a balanced life with good people around you and living a lifestyle that sort of complements your triathlon lifestyle. Because if we're always in our head and always trying to, like you're talking about, solve problems and like dig in and like create new things to stimulate whatever, eventually that's going to come to a head. And I think that, because we train alone a lot in general in this sport, it's like, think about when you're out running, how many, like an hour and a half or something like that, and how many things that cross your mind and how you can get in your own head. And a lot of times it's a weird thing, right? Like, so sometimes it can go, I'm kind of a badass. Or it can go into this, oh, that hurts. Oh, I mean, this is going to, oh man, my whole season's gone. So you can kind of go down one road or the other. And I'm sort of that guy that made the, infamous quote a while ago that like when people have problems with their nagging injuries or something, my thought is just don't think about it, and I say that in jest sort of, but I really kind of believe it. And I think that I get caught up in my own, it's sort of like that scientist that gets trapped in his own theories or something like that and can't get out of it. And I feel like that's where I'm at right now. I just think about it too much, rather than try to balance things out and live a healthier lifestyle in general and let things go more so than try to figure out the solution. And we talk about how we run our business sometimes. We go like, hey, what do you think about this? And we just kind of let it fly out into the ether. And then about a week later, we come back and the solution generally manifests itself without even trying.
Yeah, I think so much of like how we live and like the things that we experience is what we're looking for, and like what you said, about like, just don't think about it. Like, yeah, that's not really like something that works every time, but a lot of times it kind of does. And you hear the opposite, kind of the same thing with athletes who like have had an injury or had a surgery and like they come back through and they're like, I think I had this pain here, but I can't tell if I'm just like, if it really is pain or I'm just expecting there to be pain. So I'm just so focused, like if they have knee surgery and they go out for the runs, they're like, I think I had pain today, and I think it kind of hurts, but I think it kind of feels fine. I can't really honestly tell because I feel like I'm just so hyper focused on this one specific area that it's kind of like the version of like taper pains. You know, like when you get so relaxed and the big day is coming, like no matter what you do, you're kind of you're just hypersensitive, you know, and your mind and your awareness, you feel like is on hyperdrive. Every single thing you feel like you notice. And you're like, oh, God, I didn't know I had this like pain in my foot. Like, maybe I screwed it up. Maybe I get an X-ray. And you're like, no, you didn't really do anything. Like, nothing's wrong with you. Like, it's what you're looking for, right? And like, and for so much, like we find sometimes the answers that we think we needed are not really what we needed at all. It's just the answers that we were looking for. And I think that's a really big difference in training and in racing and how we do, well, just in life, is that, you know, it's you know, I always use the car analogy. You know, it's like in terms of like, you know, looking for answers, like, you know, using like the run as like the end of your race and like always gets to blame for everything. Or, you know, you go out for a bad run and all of a sudden it's your fitness that's a problem. It's not the fact that, you know, you got 3 hours of sleep and haven't eaten in 2 days and your kids are sick. You know, that's the problem, right? Like, it's not the problem. Right. That's just life. And so your run, that's just a direct reflection of life. But we like to blame, I'm not getting faster. Maybe I need to try a new pair of shoes, maybe a different drop. Maybe I need to get my run form, you know, analyzed. Like maybe need to add some more, you know, repeats in there because I feel like my VO2 max is dropping. Like, whoa, slow down a minute. Like, look at the most simplest thing. But we like to look at a complex answer to us at least makes immediate sense, or we can at least attach ourselves to, because that's exciting. But going back to the car analogy, just because you're looking for, and just because you decide to look for an answer doesn't mean it's the answer. It just means it was one that's most convenient to you, or that made you excited, or that you fell in love with. It's like, oh yeah, I'm shopping for a new Nissan Altima, and then the next 4 days, all you see are freaking Nissan Altimas. Like, it's not like there are more Nissan Altimas on the road. You just started looking for them more often. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that like everyone else is, you know, and you're like, oh, that's a sign. It's a sign I should definitely get a Nissan. No, you're just looking for more Nissan Altimas. And like but that's how our brains work. Like, we do this with everything in life. Or you're thinking like, I think I want to race this year. You know, I think I'm going to do an Ironman. And then like, blink, you get this notification in your inbox. It's Ironman announced a new, and you're like, see, told you. I told you. I was just feeling it, and no, you're just looking for something specific. And we do the same thing with injuries. We do the same thing with fitness that we feel is going great. We feel like the same thing with setbacks. You know, we look for, sometimes, again, like going back to finding an answer. It's usually the most simplest, obvious thing. It's not the coincidence. It's not buying a new piece of gear. It's not doing adopting a whole new training cycle that's totally out of the norm. It's usually just like, all right, think back and be like, all right, what makes the most sense? And then you have to think about what makes the most sense and why, and think, okay, all right, that's probably why. So sometimes there really isn't an answer. Sometimes it's just overall awareness, right, of how your life is going and what you're dealing with. And then, if it's an injury, then think about it. How can I best deal with this if it is an injury, then not to, make it even worse? Like, and you can think through those things, but a lot of times, like, there will be at least one run a week. I'll head up my driveway and run down this hill, and about halfway down the hill, my foot will just like have this like insane amount of pain. Not like that's going to drop me, but I'm like, I notice this, and I kind of have to like limp my way for a minute.
Yep.
Literally never stop running. I'm just like, I've had it before. It's going to go away. Have no idea what it is. Have no idea what the medical diagnosis could be, or like what would actually be wrong with my foot. But it feels like almost like a crippling pain that if it feels like this for another minute, then I'm probably not going to finish my run. I probably am hurt. But I'm just going to keep going, because my first instinct is I just want to keep running, right? And I'm not saying you should be stubborn with pain, but I'm saying, be aware. And I think that's the hardest thing for people to do these days, is just to generally troubleshoot on their own. Because again, the last thing you may or may not want to do is, we do this with, again, with Google or with, social media, is like, so I'm looking for, a diagnosis. That's the one that I like, because there could be 25 different diagnoses, or you go to a doctor and you're like, Mike, you need to take 2 weeks off running. I'm gonna get a second opinion, and you're like, and they're like, oh, you can run through this. Like, this is gonna be great. And you're like, I like this diagnosis. Like which I think is common. Like we're human beings. Like we're always going to veer towards, the things that we like. We're gonna always want to affirm, our beliefs. We're not, most people don't go out looking to think, all right, change my mind, world, and look to all these new different things and start to consume, different literature or different things that totally, counter or contradict your whole philosophy on life. We don't do that as people. Like, we should do it more often. We should challenge ourselves more often, I think. But because it's either going to change your view and feel more enlightened, or it's just going to concrete you more into what you believe, but at least you've exposed yourself to something different. We don't do that. It's what I call a confirmation bias. But we do that with training. We do that with injuries. We do that with racing and with training and relationship. And we do it all the time, but that's never really the answer, because you're just looking for something you already assume is going to be there, that you want to be there, and you probably know it is. You're just veering down this road of, I finally got to the end of this journey. Well, you already knew the way. You already knew that was at the end. This is kind of just the most comfortable thing for you. And I think it's hard. I think troubleshooting for the athlete is hard, because you always want it to be about triathlon, and you always want it to be about swimming and biking and running, because it's simple. I can adjust this, or I can fix this, or I can buy this, or I can sign up for this race, or I can increase this, or I can do something different. I have something that I can, but if it comes back to life and sleep and nutrition and all these things that are just the common sense, do those things. If you're going to overanalyze your workout, or overanalyze and overthink a niggle or a pain, or you're going to overanalyze this single interval, or go back and compare a workout from 6 months ago on a random day at a random time, if you're going to spend that much time doing that, then spend the same amount, if not more time, doing your own personal inventory on, am I sleeping enough? How am I eating? How's my stress level? When am I doing my workouts? Am I having too much caffeine? Am I tired? Am I not tired? And if I am tired, am I fatigued because I've been training too much, or am I fatigued because I'm, because of work and because of relationships, or because of my kids? And if I am working out well, why am I working out well when I do? Is it because the time of day? Is it because the temperature? Is it because of what I'm exposing myself to? And you're wait a minute, I don't want to think about that. I just want to tell myself, coach, I need more VO2 max intervals. And then the problem is solved. But oftentimes this problem is right in front of us, and it's things that cannot just complement your training and your fitness and what you're doing, but it can complement your whole life in general. Because I've said this so many times before in the podcast that I've never met an athlete who's been like, coach, my life's under turmoil and I am crushing it in Training Peaks. No, literally never happens, right? But if you have an athlete who is in just a total groove and is loving life and feels present and is positive and they feel overall healthy and everything is going well, then it was reciprocated and shows up and is expressed with green and Training Peaks, with consistency, and they're loving the process and loving the work. And you could argue, what comes first, chicken for the egg? But most oftentimes it's life and then training, not training and then life.
Mm. Man, that what you said about that running in the beginning, and you felt the foot pain or whatever, that kind of stuff resonates with me so much. It's yeah, you've had it before, so it's just okay, I'm going to go through this, and it's just that, almost that experience, right? But I definitely know, and I've seen this before. I knew this guy, for example, he always had back pain, and every time I saw him, he was stretching. You know what I mean? No matter, we're out to dinner and he's sort of leaning back in his chair, or he's leaning to the side, or kind of reaching out, constantly trying to stretch it out or fix it or whatever. So all he's obsessed with it. And that's sort of how I feel sometimes. And I've had situations where I've dealt with what's that thing called? IT band. And I've had that before my race here in Chattanooga several years ago. I had it a little bit that summer, and I think I've said this in the podcast many years ago, but there was a time coming up Battery Hill on the second loop of my Ironman race, and I started to feel plantar fasciitis, the IT band flare. And I said, nope, not going to happen.
Not happening today.
And after Battery Hill, what's next is the hilliest part of the course. And I had just maybe 5 miles left or something. And I was just no, it's not. I'm not going to let that happen.
We're not doing this today.
No, and it worked. I mean, it's just a weird thing, but I think that's so huge, right? It's why do we? Because that's what we do, right? And you've seen me where I'll be watching videos with shoulder pain and how to solve it for good or whatever. And the next thing you know, I'm walking in a full body suit and a football helmet with a weight hanging on it, and to the other side to balance out my whatever. You know what I mean? You're you look at me and you go, I can't even.
I can't even, dude.
I can't even. But that's what we do. We just that's all we focus on.
I mean, to be fair, you walked in and you were taking your shirt off. I was he's going to show me a six pack. He's ripped. I know he's been hitting hard. And he showed me off and showed me this RoboCop shoulder bracelet, harness you had on your shoulder. I was dude, I can't with you right now.
I know, man. But it's what I do think that's a real problem. And with not just me, but a lot of people, we get that sort of nagging thing going on, and that's all we think about. And the next thing you know, we're irritating the crap out of it all the time, trying to heal it. And I think that, okay, so it's like some of the smarter things that I'll see when people say that is like, okay, your left foot hurts. Let's balance out the right side or something like that. Or like, let's work on the other side to take, the pain away, whatever. I'm just talking kind of crazy right now, but like just generally balance out everything rather than put like all the focus on that area, because it just becomes obsession. And I think that sort of triggers more, it's like if you're thinking about it all the time and you feel, oh, shoot, that's going to be a problem or whatever. Like,
and your obsession and focus is awfully in the wrong area, right? It's like, like going back to like the amount of people we've had come in the last few weeks and doing like run analysis or in the endless pool, or they've got we did a bike fit a few weeks ago, and you're like, okay, well, rarely ever is the problem the problem. It's you have another problem that's manifests its way into now presenting them in the problem that you've now basically attached your mind to, right? And I'm not saying that like, oh, your foot hurts, or it's not your foot hurts, your shoulder. No, that happens. But I'm just saying, like, when it comes to like how complex and all the moving parts and levers and the mechanics that your body has, like when you're working on someone like fixing their swim stroke or their body positioning, I'm never like, for body positioning, I don't just say lift your legs up, right? Like, which is like the common thing. Oh, I got to kick more. I'm like, tell me how kicking that much is going to make your legs up. No, it makes you sink more for most people because their kick's inefficient. I don't even start with the legs. I start with their body or their stroke. Like if you actually have a really good stroke and early vertical form, it helps keep your body positioning. Don't focus on your legs. Focus on being higher in the water and use your hips, use your side. Like it's not always, again, the problem isn't always the problem. It's just the one that you've like noticed. Like if athletes have like hip pain, right, on their run, I'm like, it's not your run. That's a problem. I guarantee you, if you go and you send me like a picture of you on your bike fit, I would put money on it, the fact that your hip angle is way closed. Like you're sitting too far back in your saddle, and your hip angle's too closed. You can bike without having a lot of problems or issues with it, and it won't show up. But when you go run, guess what? Hello, it's gonna weigh. But what do you think? Oh, coach, it's my run stride. Like I gotta lean back on the hills. I can't be doing hills. I gotta stay on the flats. I probably gotta ease back. Oh, how about we get a bike fit? And they're like, oh, my running pain is gone. So was your run pain? No, it just showed up like that. I think the same way goes for when you have people come in and they hop on the curved treadmill and you look at them, I always start up top, right? Because everyone always focuses on the feet, right? Oh, well, you're landing this way, you're landing that way, you're landing this way. But that's the last place. That's where everything ends up, is on your feet. I always start up top. How is your head? How are your shoulders? And you would be stunned at how many people run with like a shoulder leaning one way. Well, if your shoulder's leaning one way, then so it's bringing your other side up, and so is your hip is also coming up, which changes the whole like biomechanics of your body and your run form. Then you just kind of work your way down. Have you had hip problems? Is one of your hips tighter than the other? Yeah, I've had hip problems. Like we have had, this has been an issue. Okay, well then let's try and fix this. And you can fix your feet in your stride by fixing like your upper body. Same thing goes with swimming. It's like, don't focus on fixing your legs, focus on fixing like the upper part of your body, right? There's always something else most of the time. So not always, but most of the time there's something else to fix in order to find the solution that you've kind of fixed your problem to, which is like, again, it could definitely be your shoulder. It could obviously be someone's foot. Like, again, I'm not saying that the injury isn't the injury, but a lot of times it's come from or stems from multiple areas. Like you see people go all the time. Like I work with athletes that'll go to the physio and they're like, yeah, I have this problem. They're like, oh, well, it's because you're tight here, right? And it totally changes, how you run. And that's why you're having problems over here. It's because actually over here, your glutes aren't firing, or your hamstrings are super tight, or the way that you're sitting. A lot of times I'll have this conversation like, my hips are real tight. I think it's on bike fit. Or have you been driving a lot lately? Well, yeah. Okay, maybe look at that. Like, it's like there's always like, because your hips are going to be super tight.
Yeah.
Like, look at all these things that make sense, that kind of like the common sense approach. Then, it's like, look in the pantry first, right? Instead of going to like the extravagant supermarket and trying to make some crazy, like look at the most obvious place first to fix it, and not something, like crazy. Just look at the most simple things first. I'm like, okay, maybe this, maybe. And then once you've like exhausted all of those obvious common sense things, then maybe if you can't find the answer, then let's try and find, like a specialty doctor or something like that. I'm not saying ignore injuries. I'm just saying like, can we please use some common sense and not have to be because I'll be honest with you, I think with as much like recovery, cryo, needling, gastro scraping things that we have now that are basically like businesses, I think it's almost, I'm not saying it's popular to become injured. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying there are trends that gear people towards this is like their thing. And I think that like we haven't always had these things, yet people remained perfectly healthy. People trained for Ironman triathlons. People were just as fast 20 years ago without freezing machines and needles and all these kind of things. Like, I'm not saying that they could have been better, but I'm saying there are ways to just kind of like monitor yourself on a daily basis and troubleshoot and triage things and just and still be, I don't know, pretty awesome.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome to think of that way. It's sort of like that is almost a hyper focus on things too, right? Like, if your foot hurts, let's go like needle it up or whatever like that. But we talk about when I'm dealing with plantar fasciitis on my left foot, and then I joke about how my shoulder hurts on the opposite side. Well, it makes sense to me that maybe I compensated something to help my foot and it like connected to my opposite shoulder. I mean, I can't put that into words or, anatomy or anything like that, but I can believe it that like I had to sacrifice something to get something else because I was out of balance. So that's
especially
why
when you're in motion. Like if you're standing still, you can wave at me and it won't change anything if your feet are planted. But if you're running and you're doing something different with literally one limb, all of your other limbs are going to be in some way affected. Like that's not crazy to think of. Like everything you do, especially when you're moving, it's like when we look at people swimming and you're like, okay, you're doing this, but before we start here, let's work our way back over here because you can actually fix this by fixing this over here, which might be an easier solution than trying to isolate this one very specific thing for someone to address. It's always like a cascade effect. We always talk about links in a chain for fitness, or links in a chain for fitness. It's also just about links on the chain for in terms of like, people use chains in terms of like how your body is connected, like the things that do, it's like, do this to get that, right? It's like, my knee points this way. Okay. You don't just focus on pointing your knee a certain way, maybe focus on pointing your, toes a different direction or engaging this. And like, you might have this, like, there are just so many ways to think through things. But I think we want to look on, we Google, all right, hamstring pain. You're gonna get like 19 different reasons for hamstring pain. 4 of them are going to be, promoted ads that went to the top for whatever reason. And you're going to look at them and you're going to think, let's see, I don't want to do, I'm going to do PT. That's not me. I want to keep biking. That's me. Aha! That's the one I like. It's like we can pick and choose.
Tacos.
It's exactly right. More tacos and margaritas. I am in. A matter of fact, both hamstrings hurt, right? Double it up. It's like, but that's
a rare blog post.
Exactly. That's what we do. Like we look for the best solution that we think is a solution to the problem that we think we have. And then we just like, yeah, that's it, baby. Like, this is it. This is going to solve it. And you didn't solve anything. You just like satiated your appetite for something, for whatever reason. You're like, yeah, this fits. But like, that's the one that I like the most. Same thing with like diets or whatever. It's like, that's the one I kind of want to attach myself to. But it's not always, and it's very rarely like the answer. Because I can't tell you how many times you work with athletes over, and like they'll come back and like, yeah, well, the PT or so-and-so said, we got to do this, or you can't do this. And listen, I have no college degree. I have no experience in the medical field. I'm like, you know what? That just sounds dumb. And they're like, well, but you know what they'll say? That's kind of sounded dumb to me too. And it's because it's not, I'm not saying doctors are dumb. Like that's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying like, sometimes the answer isn't always like, there's always multiple answers, I think, to a lot of things. And I think that, like
the problem,
it's right. It's like, I think there's just a lot of ways to go, through, like, especially when a doctor says like to an athlete, you're never going to run again. You're never, I'm like, and then I'm always like, go get a second opinion, because like, first of all, don't ever tell someone they can't ever do anything ever again. I hate that thought process. When I had my elbow surgery, this is forever ago, but the doctor was like, you're probably not going to swim like to any like kind of competitive level ever again, just because of the damage to your elbow. I have like a titanium piece right now. And yeah, I still swim pretty good when I want to get in the pool and like swim. So I'm like, I think there's always a way. And I'm not saying like, this isn't like an anti-science or anti-medical, phrase. It's just I just think that common sense goes a long way, but not just common sense. just like learning and listening to your body and being the person on this planet that knows your body better than anybody, that has the faith to understand what are you feeling and to triage it yourself all the time. And like joking to back in the 80s and back in the 80s, I was born in the 80s, back in the 80s. And like, when you look at like the fastest times, right, that have ever been put up for an Ironman, like they're just now breaking them from back in the day when they rode road bikes, right? They didn't have trainers that cost $1,000. Their bike didn't cost like $400, right? They went off like water and like, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and they didn't even wear wetsuits. They wore like the same. They didn't have like a race day speedo. They probably had a speedo they've been wearing for the last year. They didn't go to cryotherapy or extravagant needling or doing all these things. They just kind of, monitored themselves and like, yeah, this is what I kind of need to do. Maybe they worked off a notepad with a pencil, like they wore a Timex watch. There was no Training Peaks. There was no this. Yet they're racing these distances in like the low 9 hours and 8 hour range incredibly well. Like, it's, again, like I think sometimes we get infatuated with what we have at our disposal, and we now have kind of like adopted the culture and nature of like, well, if it's available, then it must be imperative to have, or it must be something that's imperative to be successful, or I must have this software or this piece of equipment or this thing. It's available, therefore it's a must. And that's just because something is available and there doesn't mean it has to be yours to be successful. And I think that if you kind of, and again, just going back to, it sounds like, way old school, but that's fine. It's like the best thing you can ever have or know or own, I guess is the best way to put it. The best thing you can own is an ultimate sense of awareness about your body and its health and what you really need, without having to look for other. Because listen, like I've stayed pretty much, pretty injury free. I'm in the same way. Like I've rarely ever take time off for injuries. I just feel like and I'm not the most athletic person ever. I just feel like I'm definitely not the smartest person ever. I just know that I know my body really, really, really well. And I listen to it. And I think that's the other thing, is that I like to be in tune and listen to my body, which I think is hard, right? So it's a hard skill. And I think it's something you have, but it's, again, and I think this is something like you have to kind of like work through with athletes, is like, it's not a skill that happens tomorrow. I can't be like, hey, Jill, go out tomorrow and just listen to your body and get the feel for it. And you're going to know the RPE scale. It takes time, but what happens? Time. You have to do that repetitively. You have to expose yourself and put yourself in situations to get to know your body, instead of just zoning out all the time on technology or this or that. It's like, get to know it and think of it, because you are always going to be your biggest fan, your biggest advocate, your biggest supporter, your best doctor, in my opinion, for most things, like the regular stuff. But it's like we got to get to know ourselves better, because that confidence of knowing yourself and thinking, I can go out on a, example, like a 25, 30 mile run. And if I get in a bad place physically, I feel like I'm going to be okay. Like, I feel like I can think my way through and think, all right, why are you in the spot? Like, it's not going to be like, all right, bring in the helicopters. It's going to be like, all right, dude, you probably missed a fueling point, or you're cramping. So let's do this. It's not like, let's throw in the towel. I give up. I give in. It's like, all right, let's work my way back and fix this. And I think that confidence, especially for long course racing, when the elements and the distance can be so daunting and can wreak so much havoc, that knowing yourself and learning your body and troubleshooting your own life and your own training is just totally invaluable.
I agree. Hippocrates, right? That's the guy, that Greek philosopher.
Dude, you're asking the wrong guy about Greek philosophy.
I think it was him.
He
said, "A man who is not his own doctor is a fool."
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Which like I love that quote, and especially like you're saying, just in the stuff that we deal with on a kind of a typical basis in triathlon or whatever. And it just occurred to me, actually, while you're talking, that I think what I need to do is now figure out how to get plantar fasciitis back to get rid of my shoulder pain. But no, it's the body balance. And, I've talked, I think I sort of ignorantly was lucky when I started this sport to really not have a watch and just do the Timex thing. And chrono, a bill, like that really was like, you can't really do much other than listen to your body while that's going on. You know what I mean? Like if you're looking at pace on your watch all the time and you're looking at heart rate and you're all these things, you're sort of distracted in another place. And I think I'm fortunate for that. And I wonder sometimes maybe if my gadgetry has been picking up. I was just
about to say, are you, because hell is about to freeze over.
I know.
What is it? 11:32 Monday, February 1st, the year 2021. Mike Trolley, have you become too obsessed with gadgets?
I know, right?
Are you? What is happening now?
I've gone to the treadmill. I'm on the watt bike, and I'm all about these things. And I'm like, I say, I watch these things, and I'm like, first of all, that treadmill. I don't even know why I care about gadgets on that thing, because I'm either running a 5-minute pace or a 14-minute pace.
It's got everything.
There's it's not even close half the time, and that's probably on me. I'm sure I can calibrate whatever. But then,
are you looking at your watch too much?
Not really.
You're on the treadmill. The speed's in front of you.
I know,
and you're not going anywhere.
I usually look at heart rate.
Do we need to have an intervention?
I'm like, why am I looking at heart rate?
Why are you looking at anything on the treadmill? The screen's in front of you.
Right. I know, but it gets boring. Sometimes I look at heart rate. Or anyway, and then I'm on the watt bike and I'm all about these watts and everything. And I know for fact, if I just rode my bike a lot more and liked it and worried about these balance of the body issues that we talk about, whether it's sleep or eating better or, I always talk about yoga and people are like, well, stretching. No, for me, it's always about body balance, because they make you do things on the exact opposite side that you just did. And slowly but surely, ideally, your body will come into sync and be as strong on both sides and equally strong, so you're not overpowering. And that's what we all do, right? We all have a strong leg and a strong arm in the water, so we're pulling more with our dominant arm, and there's no balance and things like that. So I am giving up gadgets today.
Man, I don't believe that. Man, I'm stunned right now. You've surprised me on a daily basis. I don't know, but it's
the minute I got this damn Garmin, I started getting hurt all the time.
I don't know, but it's uncomfortable.
It's a weird
thing. It's really uncomfortable.
All right, it's fine, dude.
Yeah, it's fine. And you know what? This podcast, it's been fine. Hasn't been great. hasn't been terrible. It's been fine. 6 out of 10, which is
a few nuggets.
6 out of 10. Yeah, it's good. 6 out of 10 is how I usually rank them. I mean, a great podcast is a 7. So yeah, we generally rank them 6 out of 10. As always, we appreciate you. We appreciate you tuning in, giving us your time. Hopefully you got something from today's podcast. I promise to come back with a ripper on the next one, which might be, over promising.
Under deliver.
If you have, I know we
under promise, over deliver.
Yeah, or under promise, just deliver the best you can.
Which is
kind of what we do. But as always, we appreciate you tuning in and giving us your time. We'll see you again on Thursday. Swing by our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. We still have our club membership going on. It's on the coaching tab. Scroll down 3, click on it, learn more about it. Mike's in charge of that. He's also taking on new athletes right now. And as I mentioned last week, if you're interested, reach out. He's at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions for me specifically, you can always reach out to me directly, and I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
And while you're on that coaching tab, if you're thinking about your swim, there is an option now to purchase a video swim analysis, and it's pretty easy to do. You go out and get some video from the side and from the front angle. You send it to us, and we'll send you back a telestrated version of things that you might want to work on to keep that balance in the water and be a faster and stronger and more purposeful swimmer. We're also offering in-person swim analysis if you happen to be in the Chattanooga area. Just
or
for that
anywhere.
one, just
yeah. I mean, if you want to come in and schedule a visit. Schedule a visit.
If you're driving through, stop in for an hour and a half, and we'll one-on-one work with you. And just email c26coach@gmail.com, and we'll have to figure out a time that works for everybody.
Yeah, we'll bring you in. That's all I got, man. Over an hour. We extended it today.
I know.
Jesus.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody, and we will talk to you again on Thursday.
Yeah. See you, dude.